Submission of application for Florida Department of Environmental Protection Land and Water Conservation Fund grant for improvements to Navarre Park.
Thank you.
Ms. Harris.
I have a PowerPoint that I'll run through really quickly. This is an application that we're currently preparing, like you said, for the Land and Water Conservation Fund. Next slide. A little bit of information about the grant. It is a federal competitive grant program to develop or acquire land for public outdoor recreation use. The max grant request can be up to $200,000. There is a one-on-one matching requirement, and only one application can be submitted at a time. That application can only involve one project site unless you are adding multiple sandy beach accesses. And finally, the site must be dedicated in perpetuity for outdoor recreation use. As you all know, I provided, along with the Parks Department, several park options, and you directed staff to develop an application for Navarre Park. Sorry to jump around. A little bit more about the grant. The program itself has been funded at minimum levels for the last few years, which equated to about $2.2 million for Florida. They do expect that the available program funds for this current cycle will be back to the typical amount, which is $300 million. So that is good news. That will mean more for Florida. Those amounts will be finalized in July. Projects that are submitted will be scored in the summer or fall of this year, and then Congress will make their decisions in 2016. And if awarded, that will be done in September of 16. For this particular grant, more than half of the request has to actually be spent on primary recreation facilities. You can see some examples there. Next slide. You can also request funding for support facilities, but it cannot dominate more than half of the request. Next slide. So again, Navarre Park is the specific project we're looking at. Next slide. The existing amenities are listed here. I would hope most in the room are familiar with the park, so I won't go through each of those. Next slide. You can see some site pictures just to give you an idea of what is the site currently looks like. Next slide. Okay, so where we got from here is we've actually looked at Navarre Park the last couple of years for various grant applications to improve the recreational amenities. So the items that we are proposing for inclusion in this application are listed here and are based on input received over the last few years. So what we are proposing in this application are those items listed in the bulleted items. We do have at the bottom noted that we would like to replace or repair the existing boardwalk, but I do not believe that is cost effective to include in the $400,000 budget, so that will most likely be removed. Next slide. These are very, very preliminary estimates just for public input purposes. We will finalize these numbers over the next 2 weeks before the application is due. Just wanted to give the public an idea of what the magnitude cost could potentially be, with the highest probably going toward the renovation of the splash pad and the playground, which I believe to be two of the main desires that we've heard from the public. We're also looking at some additional seating and shade, as well as a ADA accessible kayak launch. You can see that we're working with a $400,000 budget. Again, those numbers will most likely fluctuate between now and the application deadline. Next slide. Just a couple of pictures of what the kayak launch may look like. We don't have that final plan determined. Next slide. And what a shade structure might potentially look like in the park. Next slide. Again, we're requesting $200,000 with local match coming from District 4 recreation funds. And today we are doing the third of 3 public input meetings. The first was held January 28th in conjunction with the regularly scheduled Parks Advisory Committee meeting. On February 3rd, we met at the Navarre Visitors Information Center in conjunction with the Chamber Foundation. That meeting was very heavily attended, and we got a lot of good feedback, and we've in fact made some changes already to what we were proposing 2 weeks ago, and those requested changes have been incorporated into the grant application itself, as well as the conceptual drawing. Then today, of course, we're here having the final public meeting. What I'd like to do is I also brought the map, the conceptual drawing, to just address a couple of things before we get the public input. If you could pull up the map, Joy. Basically, we had initially thought we could rearrange some of the current facilities. For instance, we had proposed moving the basketball court and adding seating in its place. However, we've since decided to just shift that basketball court just to the east a little bit. We are not proposing removal of any parking spots. And we are looking at, if you could pull that up, we're still looking at seating, but perhaps somehow trying to utilize the pond space there. And so this is just a conceptual drawing. We do expect that the final will be close to this. I'd be happy to share this with anybody via email after the meeting, and I'll have additional copies as well. Is there any questions from any of you, or are we ready to take public input?
Anyone from the public wish to address this? Name and address, please.
Mike Sandler, 1905 Williams Creek Drive, Navarre. Here for the Navarre Chamber Foundation. Regardless of whether, if we, hopefully we'll get this this grant. The Navarre Chamber Foundation has obligated $5,000 cash. That's not in kind, regardless of whether it's $50,000 or $400,000. The Chamber Foundation's putting up an additional $5,000 cash.
Very good. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, Peter Zane, 2861 PGA Boulevard. I saw the initial design. I'm glad that we're maintaining all parking. We need all the parking we've got there for the events. I would suggest, maybe outside, that to try to declutter the east end of the park, and if there's money available, maybe consider moving the basketball court to the west end near the new restrooms, and that also would segregate the little kids playing with the playground and splash pad and big kids, because sometimes those may not mix as well as we would like, and that would give additional space around the playground and the splash pad for expansion, seating, shade, whichever.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sure that Sheila and Commissioner Rob Williamson heard what you said. Commissioner Rob Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Sheila for working on this and the quick turnaround. Did a great job of the presentation that we had, and want to thank Roger Blaylock for his team and their quick turnaround for the diagram, and the idea for this is why we have public comment. We had some really good commentary. We had a really well-attended meeting, and it was pretty clear to everyone that the loss of parking or a disruption in the visibility of the Panhandle Butterfly House was not going to be supported in any way. And we went back to the drawing board, and actually it was Stephen Furman who provided the recommendation that we look at using a bulkhead across the corner and of the, I guess it would be the northwest corner of the retention area, and that would get us the elevated seating we would need, and we wouldn't have to relocate the basketball court, and we wouldn't lose any parking. So it looks like we're going to provide all the amenities that the community said that they wanted. That includes expanding the splash pad, which is pretty popular, and we're going to be able to do that without disrupting anything. So I think it's going to be a good project, and now we just need to go get the funding. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, Sheila, at this time, we need to approve the application. Public process, at the end of this process, it'll be over. You're finished with all your public hearings. Okay. Anyone else from the public wish to address this before we move on? Yes, ma'am. In the back. I think we're going to hear about the butterfly house.
Yes, you are. Is it on? You have to look
Pull it down.
My name is Louise Biernesser. Although I live in the north, I am president of the Panhandle Butterfly.
It was on, okay.
No? That's a change. Oh. Anyway, I'd just like to thank you, Commissioner, and all of you I am always concerned about the Butterfly House. You know, we have 13,000, 14,000 people that visit that facility every year. And we're all about the environment, education and environment. And of those 13 to 14,000 visitors we receive, they're not all tourists. Although the tourists will bring additional funds and money into the community, we have locals that visit regularly. And I do just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
And if you step on my toes again, I'll be right back.
Make sure you got his home address.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Rob Williamson.
And I apologize. I wanted to say thank you to Mike and the Chamber Foundation for your generous gift to this project and the time that you have spent and your group has spent coordinating this. This goes back to the previous grant award with the time that you put in with it, and I'm grateful, and I know that the Navarre community is grateful. You do so much, and just want to say thank you. Mr. Chairman, if we could move approval of the application from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection Land and Water Conservation Fund grant for the improvements to Navarre Park, and I would make that motion without objection.
Hearing none, it passes.
Thank you.
Okay, the second part of the public hearing is resolution including Land and Water Conservation Fund grant funded improvements at the Navarre Park in the Capital Improvement Plan CIP.
Move approval without objection.
Hearing none, it passes. All right, that gets us through our public hearing, and we